Let's get it started. Why not?
Okay.
So hi guys.
Hi guys.
I am here with Janet Rydell, and I became immediately enamored with her when I was at a breakfast and she started talking about quantum physics, and automatically my little antenna went up and I was like, oh, she knows about quantum physics. I want to know more about quantum physics.
Right.
I've been really interested in it lately. So we've established a friendship based in quantum physics, amongst a few other things, of course, because she does have quite a diverse range of knowledge, which has been a treat to just interact with. So we decided to try making a couple videos through the lens of quantum physics, but also to encompass so many things in life, because that is the nature of physics. You kind of study everything through that lens to some degree. It just is a lens to see the world through. Let's start by explaining what quantum physics is in general.
Okay.
So how would you, let's try and define this beast.
Well, it's so diverse. It's almost, you know, where do you start? You can start with 12 definitions right off the bat for what quantum physics is. But I guess where I'd start is the first step of logic is define your terms. So if you take the two words quantum means how great in Latin.
Oh.
And it's kind of a measurement between the subatomic and the matter, the world of matter.
Okay, so when you say subatomic, you're meaning like the smallest particles that there are. Like
Yes.
you take an atom, which when I was a kid, that was the smallest.
It was, but now it's a
there's
neutrino.
some subatomic. Now that we have all the way down to, like you said, a neutrino. So that's
Right,
yeah.
but the catch there is anything that has mass and weight is considered matter.
okay.
But what about matter that has no weight and has no mass?
So would that be
That's-
considered something along the lines of light?
Yes.
Okay.
Light and thought.
Light and thought.
So anyway, to finish my definition of what quantum physics is, if you take those two root words, matter and how great, then you have the study of the universe from the perspective of how do we measure the universe? Where did quantum physicists love big questions, like big questions like
Right.
how did the universe begin?
Uh-huh.
How is it going to end? Who started the Big Bang? How did it
Right.
start? You know, what is nanoreality? All of these questions, because of the nature of the scientific way of explaining matter or defining it, is they take the question mark off of the question and they make the statement,
Uh-huh.
energy is, and then they set about proving it.
Okay.
So that's, I don't know if that mixed you up
So,
more or...
well, it's just, we're not answering questions like, what'd you eat for lunch? It's how did the universe start? And
Yeah.
then trying to prove that. And so it's just a whole different way of thinking or way of viewing
Okay.
the world. So that's
Good.
what's interesting about it to
Yeah.
me. So once they have the question of what is the universe, for
Okay.
instance, through quantum physics, how would they go about answering that type of question?
That's a very good point. Actually, by measuring the reality of it, they would come to a conclusion. So they'll have a hypothesis and then they'll measure it to prove it. So once they prove it, let's take the electron, for example. What's come about from quantum physics working with the electron in the last, let's say, 50 years?
Uh-huh.
Well, to begin with, TV, computers, MP3 players, DVDs, cell physics, you name it.
So much
That's
modern
our
technology.
reality
Yeah.
in the last 50 years from quantum physics study of the electron. And then the other aspect of once they've had their data in and they have it measured, even such things as nanoreality and electrons, which are invisible. They're not measurable by the tools that they use to classical physics. Classical physics no longer applies. It's a whole new ballgame. No rules.
Okay. So when you say no rules, like what, what does
No
that
rules.
mean? Like what are the implications of no rules in the
Well,
world of quantum physics?
You know, it's surprisingly, I'm going to relate to being a musician. I played a piece in an orchestra once called The Unanswered Question.
Okay.
And usually when you read music, it's a set of, time and meter and everything. Well, this piece of music was play what you want with a group.
Okay.
No parameters.
Okay.
And then you had to make it sound like it was a piece of music rather than cacophony.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at with quantum physics now. There are no rules.
It seems like if that's the analogy for it, though, harmony would be so important because you really have to understand the other people that you're playing music with, or at least be able to drop into that moment, that present moment, to be able to feel what other people are playing, so you can
gotcha.
harmonize accordingly.
But is it implied?
What do you mean?
Is harmony implied?
To me it was. The way you described it.
What if it's not implied?
In that case, I would almost consider it to be more like chaos. And that's something that wouldn't necessarily translate in traditional terms as being beautiful.
And that's what the whole exercise was, is to have us organize chaos.
Okay.
Which is actually what the universe is, organized chaos.
Yeah, and sometimes it feels disorganized.
Yeah.
So what would make chaos organized? Like, if harmony isn't necessarily the factor, how do you organize chaos?
Well, it would be the deliberate creation of your own reality and understanding where that comes from and how it's factoring into what we're doing now with quantum physics.
Okay, so I automatically think of free will when you say things like that. So just the ability for us to direct our own play in a way.
Right. Well, first we have to to really put together empirically how we create our own reality. And do you know how we do that?
I was going to go with free will, so obviously I'm on a different wavelength right now. So how do we create our own reality?
We create our own reality. How? Well, as far as they know at this juncture, it's by observation.
Okay.
And observation is the first law of, the scientific method. Observe and measure.
Right, and from what I understand, that's where quantum physics throws a lot of things off, because when they were trying to observe subatomic particles, like the smallest of the smallest particles, that's where scientists started to get confused in terms of being able to observe and measure, because the behavior wasn't predictable. Like, you have all these subatomic particles, and they try to observe how they behave, but every time they went to observe them, even in the same situations, they would act differently. And
so the old mechanical paradigm shift is gone. I mean, you can't measure it. Because can you measure non-reality? That's what they're faced with right now. Now, the quantum physicists have, there's classical quantum physics and modern quantum physics. Classical quantum physics began with, basically three guys. Galileo, Newton, and Copernicus.
Okay.
And they established that the macro world, the world we see with our senses, they started that. And then now, from 1900 to now, that is not applicable to what we're studying, because it's taken us up to a certain point and stopped.
Okay.
So modern quantum physics now is concerned with the nature of non-reality, how we deliberately create our reality, things like that, which weren't applicable with mechanistic classical physics. So we're at that juncture now. It's amazing. There's a Chinese saying, "May you be born in interesting times."
Right.
It was considered both a curse and a fortunate thing. Because the Chinese love to do that. They love to have, the same meaning for two disparate things.
Right.
So, may you be born in interesting times. Well, wouldn't you say right now is kind of interesting, like in the last 50 years? What's going to be in the next 50 years? Where can you see quantum physics going from what we just discussed?
Right. It's hard to, when you were talking about the nature of, what was it? Not non-measurable things, but non-physical things?
Yes, invisible.
Invisible. Okay, so the nature of the invisible, to me, that's in terms of where quantum physics would be going.
Exactly where they're going.
Like, so what is...
They're going into intuition, ESP, remote viewing.
Okay.
deliberate consciousness holographic creation.
Okay.
And that's exactly where they're going right now with it. And these are new fields that usually belong to, well, they consider them magic.
Okay, right, because they didn't understand
But
it
now it's
enough
considered scientific. So they're
Right.
exploring it from a scientific point of view rather than just saying, oh, that's magic. What is reality? What is consciousness? Because
Okay.
underlying what I've studied quantum physics to be, it almost stops at reality creation. And what underlies matter?
To me, it's thought.
Well, thought, yeah, it's very, very close, but thought is based on what?
I guess your consciousness, like that's
Consciousness.
all the knowledge that you've accumulated
one word.
up to this point.
That's where I think quantum physics is going, is to explain what consciousness is.
In terms of like an example of day in and day out interactions and practical life, like what does quantum physics look like?
It's making us, well, it's challenging us to move into a new paradigm.
Okay.
You know what a paradigm is, don't you?
I think of it in terms of like consciousness evolving, like you're within a certain paradigm within like a collective consciousness in terms of what the culture looks like and what society is doing and what its value systems
But it's on
are.
a humanitarian level. It's not on a
Right.
personal level.
Exactly. That's why I said as a collective. And then
Nice.
as a like a change in a paradigm would be that consciousness and that value system and
That
that
we've
culture,
all accepted
right, starts
is now
to change.
changing.
Right.
What is the change and what is that paradigm shift going to create in our personal lives? Is
Okay.
that the question?
In terms of quantum physics, yeah, and
Right.
how like it applies
Good.
to.
Because that comes to my next, part of quantum physics that I'm fascinated with, literally, is thought. What is it? What is thought? How do we think? And what are the ramifications of that through quantum physics, which is energy? So how do we take thoughts, which are energy, and deliberately create with them? In other words, being
Okay.
in the moment, totally aware that we're focused on one thought, and we hold that focus long enough, and we attach feeling to that focus, and
Oh.
get excited about it, without any distractions interrupting us. Guess what? It manifests.
Okay, so that emotion is almost like the rocket fuel that you add to the
Feeling
rocket.
is the secret.
Okay.
It's the gas in the
Okay.
car.
Gotcha.
You can press the gas pedal with no gas, you're not going anywhere.
Okay, so
That's why people get stuck on when they think in affirmations, and they're positive affirmations.
Mhm.
But if you don't attach the feeling to it, it doesn't go anywhere. It takes
Gotcha.
much longer.
So, in a practical way, that would be like the difference of me saying a prayer that it rains today and just being kind of apathetic about it versus
exactly.
me saying a prayer that it rains today and putting feeling in it and being present and putting that emotional kicker
Positive.
into it.
Yeah, and that's what I developed in my new self-mastery class is focus, emotion-backed, programmed positive thought. And I can make a mnemonic out of that.
Yeah.
Focused is the first scientific, quantum physics.
So
what you
really
observe.
tapping in. Okay.
You observe it. You focused, emotion backed. You attach feeling to what it is you're focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
Then you do that over a period of time, and it becomes a habit, and then a value system, and then a belief. And when it gets to the point that it's a belief, and like Marcy Shimoff said in The Secret, if you know with true conviction, then the universe immediately matches it, and it becomes your reality. So that's how quantum physics is fascinating to me, in the sense that if we understand what energy is,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the awareness in the now, not in the past or the future. See, that's where we really get stuck.
Yeah.
We program from the past, but we program for the future.
Okay.
We don't realize that now, it's the awareness of now, and that focused, deliberate thought created reality is what we're asking the universe to match.
Okay, and so in terms of trying to not program too much for the future or the past so we can live in the now, what are some suggestions that you have or strategies that you have to not, because it is so difficult once you've programmed yourself to be more anxious in future living or more depressed in past living, like how do you really try and reprogram yourself, so to speak, to live in the now?
Excellent question. Well, it reminds me of a quote from Einstein that got me started on this journey in the first place. He said, the hardest thing a man or a woman can do is to think. There's only the now to create in. And that's what I think Einstein meant, is we have to train ourselves deliberately to think in the now of who we are, not who we want to be. Want to be is in the future.
Right.
Or who we were is in the past. But state who we are now. And if you hold on to that and you don't let anything get in the way, you will manifest, it will automatically match. And that becomes your reality. So that's why quantum physicists are really, really looking at how energy is directed into creating reality. Well, we're not used to thinking in terms like we create our own reality and we take self-responsibility. We're trained and taught that, well, it's his fault and it's his fault and my parents did this and this is what I learned, this is what society does. No, that's looking outside of who you are.
Right.
When you take responsibility and say, I am deliberately creating my reality. My reality is this. And then stick with it. And let nothing move you.
And that brings up a really good point to me, and just how empowering this knowledge has the potential of being. Like, if you want to be the master of your own universe, despite the past that you've encountered or the future that you might be afraid of, like, just being able to abandon that and realize that it is up to you. You are empowered to create your own reality.
When you said that, I thought of, a lady that around the turn of the century when the New Thought movement started. Her name was Mary Baker Eddy, and she established an actual religion.
Okay.
She said, man is in his infancy, sleeping away the hours.
Okay.
So it means that with what we had back in the 1900s, now we're awake. We're waking up to this new reality that has no rules, that has no beginning, that has no end. It's just, you know, because we took that time and advanced to the point where we are now. Now we're about to hit time warp. This is going to eclipse the Industrial Revolution, which is what quantum physics began as.
Because this is more of like the knowledge revolution in a way. And thanks for tuning in for this organized chaos, I guess you could say, on our first video of quantum physics. We'll probably do a few more and incorporate other topics, and just a good way to get started.
Right,
so thank you for doing this.
You're
with
very,
me.
very welcome, and I hope the
it.
audience can take from you know, things that interest them and build on it from there, even though we just batted the ball across the net a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to life, is like, it's an entire buffet. It's anything you want to take from it. So we hope you at least got some good little nuggets from
Absolutely.
this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that said, Janet also does a lot of different like teaching and consulting. She has a background in astrology. And so if there's anything else you want to like learn or potentially consult with Janet, her email I will post up after this is jrydell@yahoo.com. And yeah, on that note, stay smart, stay sexy, and we will see you later.
Have fun. Bye.